Hello guys, Alan here and welcome to the most authoritative Revit tutorial channel you can ever find on YouTube. And in this series, we're going to be talking about schedules in Revit, how you can create basically any schedule inside of your Revit software. So I'm going to walk you guys through basically every kind of schedule that you can create inside of the software and how you can do that. So I'm going to take you guys through now. I'm going to use for this series, I'm going to use the Revit 2025 version. So if you're using any kind of version, you can also follow along with every step in the way. All right, it's just going to be maybe some graphical items that you're not going to see in there, but we all do the same. You are going to find everything particularly the same thing. All right, so it's just some little touches in there. So I'm going to use Revit 2025 version for this series. All right, so we are going to talk about schedules. Now when I say schedules, what do I mean by schedules? So schedules is basically picking up quantities or giving information of various counts, areas, volumes of your model. So I have this church model. I think I used this same model for my series I did, which was the advanced working drawing. So it's just the same church model. You can see in there, that's the name of my church in there, which is Yakal House. And I'm going to use this this church design I have in here to actually create that schedule. So I'm going to walk you guys through every step in the way. So let me head into the 3D view so you guys see what I have in there. So this is the church model I was talking about. You can see, so I use the same model for my working drawing series, advanced working drawing series. All right, so this is it right here, and we have just basically just some floors in here. We have just the ground floor, and we have just the first floor as well. So I have just ground and then the first floor for this model. All right, and then we have this huge void in here so that the people sitting on the gallery can actually see through to the stage in there. All right, so I'm going to go into level 6, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this level, and I'm going to delete the level 7, and I'm also going to delete my foundation plan as well. All right, so this is perfect, and I have all of this in here. Okay, so this is perfect. So I have ground floor and then also my first floor in there. All right, so we are going to start creating our schedules. We are going to start with this model I have in here. Now for you to be able to access your schedule tool inside of Revit, there are actually two ways you can do that. Now one of the very first way is you can head into your view tab on top of the ribbon in here. You can select that view tab, and then you're going to find in here your schedules. All right, now I'm going to leave the mouse pointer in here so that we read what we have in there. It says it provides options for creating schedules including material takeoffs, your sheet list, your view list, and your note blocks, and also your grid column schedules. It can also do that as well. So you can access your schedules by making sure you go into the view tab in here, and then you get into the create, and then you can find that schedules in there. Now I'm going to escape out of there. Now the other way you can get into your schedules tab is to head straight into your project browser, and then you scroll down. Maybe if you're having your project browser on this side, you would have to scroll down and then find your schedule. So I have shared my my project browser on one side, and then also my properties panel also on one side. So I have this huge space in here where I can work in. I don't usually like to scroll down like that, so I just decided to separate mine on each side. So you can actually do that in there. So you make sure you go into your project browser, and then you navigate all your way to the bottom part in here where we have the legends, the schedules, and then we have the sheets. Now you notice with the schedules in there, we do not have any schedules created for this project. I haven't created any schedules for this project actually. So you can see in there we do not have the plus symbol in there for us to be able to access the schedules we have created. But one way you can do that is to just right click in there, and then you have all of these schedules in there. All right, so we have the new view list, the new note block, the sheet list, the material takeoff, the graphical column schedules, and then the schedule quantities. All right, so we have that in there. So you can just click on that, and then you create all of those schedules in there by just right clicking on that schedule in there. All right, so those are the very two ways you can access or get into your schedule command. So I'm going to start off. So with this, we are going to start off with the schedules. So now I'm going to make sure I'm in my view tab, and then I'm going to click on my schedules in there. So when you click on your schedules in there, you have in here, we have the schedule quantities, we have the graphical column schedule, which you can actually use to create a schedule for basically each and every column you have in your project, and also your grids, using your grids lines in there. So we have all of this graphical column schedule in here, and then we have the material takeoff. Now with this material takeoff schedule, is going to create schedules of basically each and every single material that you use for this project. All right, so if let's say you want to make a material takeoff, and then find the cost of each and every single material in there, this is the part you have to use in there. All right, is the material takeoff. It's going to pick every single quantity, and then you can attach the cost to it, and it's going to give you the grand total of the cost of every single quantity that you use to design your project. All right, so we have the sheet list in there, we have the note block. I'm going to be walking you guys through each and every single part of this. So we have the sheet list, and then the notes block in there, and then we have the view list also in there. So with the notes block, it actually works like a schedule where you can use an annotation to just create some simple schedules, which is going to aid anybody that is reading your floor plan to be able to understand what is happening in there. Maybe you want to leave some notes on your floor plan to actually show or tell anybody that is reading the floor plan that this and this is this and this is that. So I'm going to walk you guys through each and every single type of the schedules that Revit comes with. So with the first start, I'm going to start off with the schedule quantities. All right, so I've showed you guys the two ways you can access your schedules. All right, is to just go into the view tab, and then you click on that schedules in there, and then you can access all your schedule types in here. Or you can come into your project browser, right click on that, and then you are going to see all this also in here as well, and you can select that and get into that as well. So we are going to start off with the schedule quantities. I'm going to pick some quantities in here. Just as my mentor, my role model, Balkan Architect, has taught me, I'm going to teach you guys the same way. All right, so I'm not going to leave anything out. I'm going to make sure I teach you guys because I love you guys, and I want to make sure I educate most of you guys. So we have this schedule quantities in here, so I'm going to click on this schedule quantities in here, and you're going to have this pop-up menu, whether you're using the Revit version, the Revit 2025 or 2024. You're going to have this pop-up menu in here which says the new schedule. All right, so you would have to first of all select the category that you want to schedule. So you can see in here Revit is going to bring out some categories for you to be able to schedule in there. And before we get into the category, now you can see at the top in here we have the filter list in there. All right, so when you click on that drop down menu in there, Revit is going to give you some scopes for you to be able to check in there. So if I was going to work on some architectural quantities, I'm going to make sure I uncheck all of these, and then I just check my architecture, and I'm going to work on only the quantities of the architecture of my project. All right, so if I was a structural engineer, I'm always going to make sure I check the structure part on, and if I was a mechanical, I'm also going to check that on, electrical, piping. So if you're an MEP person, you're going to make sure you check all of these on. All right, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So if I was going to do a quantity, I'm going to pick quantities for, let's say, a plumbing design. I'm going to actually show you guys how you can do a plumbing design, a full project, a plumbing design in Revit. All right, so because I work with an electrical engineer here in Ghana, so I can basically teach you guys how you can do your plumbing drawings inside of Revit. So I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to create a series on that. So if you're an MEP person, you can make sure you check your mechanical, electrical, and piping up. All right, so you just make sure you check all of these. That is if only you have access to the architecture and structure as well. All right, so if you do not have access to all of these, I guess you can check it on, or you can just check it off if you want. All right, so I'm going to leave everything as it is because I'm going to work basically with everything, even though I'm not going to be doing a piping quantity takeoff. All right, so I'm just going to just leave everything checked in there. So that's how you can filter out everything in there. So if I was doing piping, which is plumbing, I'm just going to make sure I just uncheck all of this and leave piping on. All right, so this is basically how that works in there for the filter list at the top in here. So I'm going to leave that at multiple. All right, so I'm basically working with everything. That's what Revit assumes I'm going to be doing. So now you would first of all have to get into your category tab. All right, so with this category tab, you have the options of selecting the category of what you want to actually schedule inside of Revit. So you see in there we have various categories. We have cable trays in there, where cable tray fittings, that is if I want to pick the quantities for my cable trays inside of my project, the fittings in there, where I have the T's, the elbows. I can also use that cable tray fittings in there to pick all of those quantities. So with that, I'll have to make sure my electrical is checked on. So it's basically going to have all of those cable trays in there. So we have casework, ceilings, columns, communication devices, conduit pipes, conduit boxes, conduit panels, systems, curtain walls, all of these. We have every single kind of anything you can think of in there. We have doors in there as well, where you can pick the quantities of your doors and windows as well. So you can do a schedule for that inside of Revit in here, which is perfect. And we can basically pick furnitures in there. We can also do for furnitures as well, and also generic models in there we can pick for that. And with this tutorial, or this tutorial in this series, I'm basically just going to do what Balkan Architect taught me how to do that. So how he basically taught us how to basically create the schedules. So I'm going to use just like as he taught, the room schedules. All right, so I'm going to create a room schedule for you guys. I'm going to use this series to create a room schedule. So I'm going to start with a room schedule. Right, so you just make sure you select any category. So when you select any category and follow through with the steps that I'm going to give you, it's basically going to work for everything. All right, it's not that when I click on a railing category, it means that I'm going to have different steps. No, you are going to have the same steps, just as anybody that is going to click on rooms, just as anybody that is going to click on stairs. All right, so I'm going to click on rooms. All right, so I'm going to create a schedules for my rooms. All right, so I'm going to select my rooms in there, and then when you select the rooms and you head into this right side of your pop-up menu in here, when you get into the right side in here, you have the opportunity to be able to name that in there. So you can decide to name that whatever you want. So if it's a room schedule, you can name that in there. So I'm basically going to leave it as the default name Revit is giving me. I think I'm fine with that. And when you head down here, we have the schedule building components. All right, so we have this schedule building components in here, which is actually going to bring out the schedules for basically the building components I have in here. All right, with response to the rooms category. All right, so we have beneath that we have the schedule keys. All right, so with the key schedule, I'm going to talk about that as well. I'm going to talk about that in the course of this series. I'm going to explain how this key schedules works. I think in the next part I'm going to explain how this key schedules work. So for now, we are going to leave that as schedule building components, and with your phasing, basically is a new construction. All right, this is not an existing building I'm actually going to schedule. So if you are scheduling for an existing building you have in there, you make sure you check your phasing. All right, so you can change that to an existing phase or a new construction. So with this, I'm going to leave this a new construction because this hasn't even been built. It's just a concept I created for my church, which they even don't have any idea I've actually designed a building for the church. So that's it. We have to leave the phasing at new construction because it's a new construction I'm actually doing in here. And when you're done, you can just hit on OK in there, and we get into the schedule properties command. All right, so all right, so this is perfect. So now we after clicking on OK, we are going to get into the schedule properties command, where we now have the option to choose the fields that we want to schedule. All right, so we would have the option to bring in the fields, and we schedule them into the scheduled fields in order. All right, so in here we have the select available fields from. All right, so we are going to leave that at rooms. Yeah, you can keep that at you do not want to keep that at project information, because it's just going to bring out the project name, project number, client name, building name, and all that. So we definitely want to schedule our rooms in there. All right, so we have the option to give it a parameter name search in there, and I'm going to leave this as it is. I'm going to leave it unchecked with no name in there. And then we have the available, and we have also the filter available fields in there, where we can actually filter some things out in here as well. So I'm going to leave this as it is in here, and I'm going to get into the available fields I have in here. All right, so when you move into your available fields in here, these fields you see in here, all right, every single thing you see in here are what Revit terms as fields. All right, so you can see it here. It has the fields name on the top bottom in here. All right, so we can get into filter, we can get into sorting and grouping, we can also get into formatting and we can get into appearance and embedded schedule. So we are going to talk about all of these, but for now we are going to leave this at fields. All right, so what Revit terms as fields is all of these commands you see in here: the wall finish, the volume, the upper limit, the perimeter, the occupant, the occupancy, the number, the name, the limit, offset, level, image, floor finish. Every single thing you see in here is what Revit terms as fields. All right, so now since I'm working with a room schedule, which I want to create quantities for that, a basic quantity for that. Definitely I would want the area of all of those rooms. All right, so if I want the area of all of those rooms, what I have to do is, when you look in the middle section in here, all right, we have this in here with an arrow with a green sign in here pointing directly into the schedule fields. All right, there's no way Revit is going to keep this down here. All right, so you're basically going to have this on top in here. All right, so if I want this area, if I want to add the area to my schedules in there, what I can do is I can just select that area and then I can move it in here. All right, so now you notice when I move it into the schedule fields in there, this now turns into red. All right, and it points an arrow in here, which means that if I do not want this area, if I don't want to schedule this area anymore, I can just select this and then I can move it out to bring it back into the available fields. All right, so this is what this arrows you see in here means. All right, so definitely I want to have the area of all of those rooms, so I'm going to move this in here, and let me just scroll down and let's see what we can also add to this. All right, let's see what we can add to this. And definitely I want the level on which that room is. If it's on the first floor, if it's on the ground floor, I definitely want that as well, so I'm going to move that also in here, and then it comes into the schedule field. So this is what Revit is going to work with. All right, so this is just available fields for you to be able to choose what you want to schedule. And then when you get into the schedule fields, this is what Revit is going to work with, since I have moved that from the available fields into the schedule fields. All right, so I'm going to scroll down as well, and definitely I want the name of the room, so I'm going to select the name of the room, and then I'm going to move that also to the schedule fields on this side in here. All right, so this is also perfect. And after moving the name of that room in there, what else can I do for this? And I want the number as well. All right, so you can decide to add the number if you want to. I definitely want the number as well, the numbering of those rooms, so I'm going to move that also to the schedule fields in there. And what else can I add to those spaces in there? What else can I add? Okay, this is perfect. I think I'm fine with this. I'm going to work with this, the area, the level, the name, and the number. All right, so now you see in there we have in parentheses, if you're in Ghana we say into brackets. If you're in Ghana or you're a Ghanaian, we understand into brackets. All right, we won't say in parentheses, so we are going to say into brackets in order. All right, so you see in here we have the schedule fields and into brackets in order. All right, so now it means that we would have to arrange all of these schedule fields in order. So I definitely want the name to come first. So what I'm going to do is, you see in here my name comes on the third row. All right, so I definitely want this name to come first. So what I can do is I make sure I select the name, and then I come in here and then move the parameter where the arrow is pointing up. All right, so I'm going to move this up so my name comes first. All right, the name comes first. Now I think I do want my level to come first, so I'm going to move the level right up to the top. All right, so first of all, what I want to see is ground floor, then I see the names of all of those rooms. All right, so let's say ground floor, then I have the name of the rooms. Let's say I have the children's service department, I have the main auditorium, I have the instrumental area, I have this. Since this is a church project, I'm scheduling for the room quantities. All right, so after the name, I definitely want to have the area, and then I also want to have the number in there. I think after the name, I want to have the number, so I'm going to move the number to the top in here. And okay, so let me just move the number right at the top. All right, let me bring the number after the level. I want the number and then the name and then the area. All right, so I think this is perfect. Oh, I've moved my name out, so let me just bring this back and Control Z. Let me just bring the area back. And what else did we take out? And the name. Right, so let's bring this back. Okay, so I'm going to move this up with the name, and then we have the area in there. So this is perfect. We have this set up correctly in there. So now when you head in here, you notice we have this icon in here which says the new parameter. All right, so if this available fields don't work for you, so these fields you see in here are what are going to serve as the columns. All right, they are going to be the columns in our schedule. All of these fields you see in here, they are the ones that are going to be the columns. All right, they are going to be on the columns, all right, in there. So if any of these parameters or these fields don't work for you, you can actually click in here and then you create that in there. So let's say if I do not have a particular something about the room that I want to schedule, and it's not in here, all right, I can actually create a parameter for that in here. So I can just give it a name, and then I give it a discipline. You can leave that a common, and then with a data type, maybe if it's time, speed, volume, currency, URL, yes or no information, I can actually change that in here and edit to tip in the description. I can also use that as well. All right, so if any of these available fields don't work for you, you can actually click on this icon in here to create a new parameter which you can actually use in your scheduling. All right, now I'm going to leave this as it is because I'm going to talk about that in the course of this series, so do not panic, guys. So I'm going to leave this just as it is in here, and we have the ability to also add parameters. All right, so we can come in here, we can click on this to make sure we add parameters in our design in there. So we have that in there which you can use to add parameters in there, and then we have the add calculated parameter. All right, so we can click on that, and then we can create formulas in there and also add up our parameters in there. So this I'm going to talk about in the course of this series. We are going to create schedules where we are going to use all of these types, so I'm not going to spend much time on this, so you just have a fair idea of what is happening in there. All right, so this is where we can actually use to add calculated parameters in there, and this is to combine our parameters that we have in there. So I'm going to talk about this also as well, and we are going to use that in the course of this series. So this is what this means in there, which is to add our parameters in there as well. So I've talked about this in here, and when you head in here, we have the option to include elements in link. All right, so so we have this include elements in links in there. That is if I have a Revit file that is linked into the software in there, so I will make sure I always check the include elements in link, which is also going to bring in the elements that I have in the linked Revit file in there. All right, so since I do not have a linked Revit file in there, I'm going to make sure I uncheck that, and I think I'm fine with all of these fields in there. Now one thing I want you guys to know is if let's say we are not, if we should hit on OK in here, all right, if we should hit on OK and process all of this into creating our schedule, and maybe we do not want the arrangement, we want our name rather to come first and also the level to come down in there, you can actually do that after finishing your schedule in there. So you do not necessarily have to make sure the arrangement is to the exact way you want it. You can actually change that. So that's the versatility of scheduling in Revit. So we can change that even after we are even done with the schedule. All right, so the moment we find out maybe we want our area to be on the top, all right, so you do not have to be scared by actually thinking that maybe when we finish this is really going to be the order. All right, so you can actually change that during the course of the video. That's also unique about Revit. That's why I love Revit so much and passionate about the software. So we are going to finish this up. So we are creating just a room schedule where it's going to pick the quantities of our various rooms. So we are done. We are going to hit on OK in here, and then we finish that schedule in here. So now you're going to notice we have this schedule in here which is far from refined in here. So you can see in here we have the ground floor plan, which is number 1. We have the reception room number 1, which is the reception, and then ground floor room number 2, we have the conference room in there. So you see the conference room in there, we have M going inside of column in there. All right, so we can actually shift that, open that up in here, so that we create all of those spaces in there. So you can create all of those spaces. So this is much better. So we have this in here which is much refined in here. So you can see in here we have all of those available fields in here, which is the level, the number, the name, and then the area. So I told you guys those fields you see in there are what are going to be on your columns. All right, so we have them on the columns in here. All right, which is perfect. So we have that on the columns in there, which is perfect. Now we are going to talk more about creating all of this schedule. This is far from refined. I'm going to show you guys how you can actually refine all of that to create a much better representation of your schedule. All right, so you can see in there we have the level, the number, the name, the area, which is perfect. All right, so this is good, and we are going to start our editing process, how we can create a much better presentation of our ground floor plan by sorting things out, formatting the appearance, the text, and also the size of the various fonts in there. We are going to talk about everything. So this is basically the room schedule I have in there. All right, so let's say if I want to even know the total quantities of my rooms, the total number of rooms I have in there, so I also have to do that in here, which I can get all of those quantities in there. So now you're going to start editing all of our quantities in there. So we are going to start off. So now when you head into the properties panel, all right, this properties panel you have in there, and then you move all the way to other. All right, so if you're having this your project browser, like I said from the beginning down here, I think you have to scroll down on your properties panel. I don't have to scroll because I have everything visible in here. All right, and I have the project browser also visible in here. So when you get into the other parameter, all right, the other instance view, these views that we have in here, now you're going to notice we have the fields, the filter, the sorting and grouping, the formatting, appearance, and embedded schedule. Just like during the beginning when we were creating, we had all of those in there, where I actually changed that at the top in there. So we have all of those available fields in here, those available types in here. All right, so now I'm going to start off with sorting and grouping. I'm going to start off with the sorting and grouping. All right, so we are going to sort and group all of those room schedules I have in there. So first of all, I'm going to hit on my edit tab in there, and when I hit on my edit tab in there, you're going to notice we have this same pop-up menu just like the beginning where we had the available fields. So I'm going to show you guys. So now when you head in here to the fields in there, you can see we have all of those types in there, just as the beginning when we were creating this room schedule, where I changed it to the filter, sorting, formatting, appearance, embedded. All right, so now one weird thing I find interesting in here is let's say if I want to do formatting. All right, so as the name implies, if I want to just format everything, make it look much presentable in here, this is where I go. So if I want to get into formatting, so when I click in here, it goes straight into the formatting tab for me to be able to format all of those information I have in here. All right, now Now, even after clicking on the formatting tab, all right, I can still get into the sorting and grouping after clicking on the formatting tab by just clicking on the sorting and grouping in here, and then I'm getting straight into the sorting and grouping instead of me after getting into the formatting. If I want to go into sorting and grouping, instead of me to cancel everything and then come in here and click on edit to get into sorting and grouping, I can get into sorting and grouping even while in the formatting tab. I can just click on sorting and grouping and get in that view in there, and also I can get into the appearance without clicking on the edit by just clicking in here. So that's one strange thing, or one tip. Let me take it as a tip you need to know. So most people do not know that. I think some people would just basically cancel and then go in here to find all of those types that they want to work on. All right, so you should know that. So if I am in the sorting and grouping and I want to work with the formatting, I can just basically click in here and then I can get into formatting in there. All right, so now I'm going to start off with sorting and grouping. So you remember when I told you guys, do not worry about the arrangement of all of these in here. All right, so you can change that. Maybe if I want the name to start first, I can put the name at first in there by getting into the fields, and I can change the arrangement in here and bring my name first. So you do not want to worry about that. So I'm going to talk first and foremost about the sorting and grouping. All right, so we want to sort things out a little bit and group them. So I'm going to start with sorting and grouping, and you have this in here. All right, so now you have sort by, which is the beginning of our sorting and grouping. You have this none checked in there, so you can click on this drop down menu, and I wanted to sort by the level, and I want you to sort by ascending order, which is going to start from the ground floor and all the way to the lower floor in there. All right, so you can actually do that, sort from the ground floor, and also you can basically sort from the ground floor in ascending order. All right, so if you have let's say various levels, so let's say you have ground floor, first floor, second floor, third floor, fourth floor. So if you want to sort, let's say from the last floor going all the way down, you're going to want to check your descending aspect in here. You're going to want to check descending. All right, so I do want to sort from ascending, so I'm going to start from the ground floor. I'm going to start basically from ascending order, start from the ground floor all the way to the first. Now I'm going to finish this so we see what we have in there. You can see it's sorting from the ground floor perfectly. All right, which is basically what Revit did automatically for us. So now I'm going to get back into sorting and grouping again, and this time I want to add a header in there and also a footer. And with the footer, the headers and the footer, you're going to see what that is. So it's going to give it a header and also a footer at the bottom. Let's say for the ground floor, it's going to give it a header and then a footer on the bottom, and then for the first floor, it's also going to give it a header and then a footer at the bottom. So with that, I want to make sure I check the title, count, and quantities in there, or I can let it give me only totals only. All right, so we have the count and totals in there, and title and totals, and I want the title, count, and totals. So I'm going to leave it at title, count, and totals in there, and I'm going to show you guys what this blank line actually means. So, and we have this in here, which is the ground totals, where it can give you the ground totals of basically all your rooms in there, the room schedules in there. So I also want to add a ground total in there, where I want to give it a ground total, so it should just give me totals only. It can also give me the total count and the title, count, and totals, and also the title and totals, the count and total. So I'm going to leave it at title, count, and totals just as it is, and we have this itemize every instance. All right, so with this, actually what this means is I want to find a simple explanation for you guys. So let's say we have let's say we are going to use a furniture, just like the example Balkan Architect gives us. So let's say if you have a furniture in there, and you are creating a schedule in there, you do not want it to be furniture, which is furniture, chair, and all that. You want it to itemize every instance. All right, so That's what this actually means. I'm going to talk more about this in the course of this series. So I'm basically going to leave this checked in there. All right, so now I'm going to click on OK in there, and then we have this in here as well. So you can see in there we have the ground floor, where it gives us the ground floor 1 2 3 4. So you can see we have ground floor, and we have reception, conference room, main auditorium, stage, bookshop, children's service, the instrumental area, we have the foyer, we have the closet, and then we have the WC in there. And then when you get into the first floor column, so with the ground floor plan, we have 10 rooms. So you can see in there it's giving me the total. So when I get back into my edit and sorting in there, and then I uncheck my itemize every instance, and then I click on OK in there, you're going to see it in there is going to not give me all of those quantities. All right, it's going to tell me it varies. So it's just going to give me ground floor plan 10. It's going to make sure it's giving me the 10 rooms in there, and it's not going to itemize every single room schedule in there. So that is why you're going to want to make sure you leave that also checked in there. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the blank line. So let me just click on OK in there, and then we have all of these various rooms in there. So this looks far from refined. I want you to be able to space a little bit from the ground floor, because it looks very attached to that, and it's going to make it difficult for anyone to be able to quickly notice the first floor instantly. So I'm going to click on sorting and grouping, get into my edit type, and then I'm going to want to add a blank line in there. So when I add that blank line, you're going to notice it's leaving that blank line at the top in there, which is actually perfect, where it's going to create all of those spaces in there for you, which is going to leave that space at the top in there, which is actually perfect. So you have that blank line in there, which is perfect. So I'm going to get back into sorting and grouping, and you can decide to create more sorting and grouping. So if you're not fine with this sorting out and grouping, you can create more sorting out and groupings in there. You can use let me see the default, let me count. So we have 1 2 3 4. So you can create 4 sorting out and grouping in there. So you can create different 4 sorts where you want to basically create all of them in this same schedule. So you can go in there, and let's say if I want to sort out the level, we did this for the level. So let's say if I want to sort out with the name, all right, so I'm going to use the name to sort everything out in there. So I'm going to leave this as it is. You can create different sorting out and groupings in there. All right, so with the ground totals in there, just like I said, we have the title count and totals. If I should give this to only totals only, you're going to notice we have just going to give me only the totals for the various floors. All right, we do not have the ground totals, where it's going to add every single floors in the entire project. So this is just basically going to work with floors. So it's just going to give me the total count of the rooms of the various floors in there. So I can get back into my sorting and grouping, click on my edit type in there, and then I want total, title, counts and totals in there. Select that and then click on OK, where it's going to give me the ground totals. All right, so it's going to give me the ground totals that in my entire project I have 14 rooms in this church project that we have in here. All right, so this is what that also does in there, and we are going to move on to the next part where we are going to talk about what we are going to talk about, which is formatting. All right, so I'm going to talk about the formatting. So I can get into my formatting by just clicking on the edit in here, and then I can get into formatting, or I can still go into sorting and grouping, and then I can just click in here and then change this to the formatting tab in there. All right, so now when you head into the formatting tab, all right, when you head into the formatting tab, now let's say with this area, all right, let's say with the area column, all right, with this area column or this area fields in there, with this area fields, I want to color all of these fields to actually leave a note in there. Let's say I want to color this entire column. All right, so what you can do is you can actually do that with the formatting. All right, but first of all, I'm going to explain everything in here. When you open your formatting app, all right, you're going to see in here we have this fields command, this fields space in here, all right, where we have the level, the number, the name, and then the area as well in here. So it depends on what you want to format. So let's say I want to format the area, so I'm going to make sure I check this to the area, and then I get into this tab right here where I can actually do my formatting of the area also in here as well. All right, so with the formatting, you can see in here we have the heading, which is the area, which is perfect, and we have the heading orientation, which is horizontal. So the heading orientation, what that means is this area in there. All right, so if I set that to vertical and then I click on OK, now you're going to notice nothing really happened in here. It didn't really change anything. All right, that is because we that is what Revit does. It's not going to work. You're not going to see that in here unless you place this schedule on a sheet. All right, so I'm going to navigate to my project browser and I'm going to create a new sheet. All right, so just right click on your sheet and then you create a new sheet. All right, make sure you always save your project, guys. It's a very interesting thing. Make sure you always save your project. So I'm going to use we can basically use an A4 sheet. This sheet is too big enough. Let me just navigate out in there and get into my sheet, my title, personal title block sheets, or I can just click that and let me just use the A1 metric in there, the A1 sheet metric in there. All right, so we have this A1 sheet in here. Now let me just undock this A1 and then put this on the side in here. All right, let me just put this on the side in here. All right, so this is perfect. I can just move this and just put this on the side. All right, so I can put this here. All right, so this is perfect. All right, so I have this sheet in here. So that's how you can place your sheet. All right, just navigate in there and we are going to place this schedule on our sheet. So you can click on the plus sign and then we have the room schedule, so I can drag and drop that on my sheet in here and then I can place that in here. All right, so when you place that on the sheet in there, you're going to notice our area in here is changed to the vertical. All right, we have this changed into the vertical form in there, but you notice it didn't change in here. All right, so you have to place your schedule on a sheet so you can actually know what you are doing. All right, so you don't mess up your schedules. So we have this in here, which is our area, which is in vertical. So I'm going to get back into, I'm going to click on my schedule, come into my schedule and then click on my formatting tab and I'm going to change this definitely to horizontal and keep that in there, apply that in there, and it's also going to change in there. So let me just enlarge this in there and you can basically just click on that to enlarge that to create that schedule. All right, so this is perfect. Can click in here and also enlarge this in there. All right, so this is perfect. I have that room schedule in here. So let me get back into my schedule tab. So just click on that view and then get into edit formatting. All right, so you can change, make sure you change this to you notice it didn't change in there. That is because we didn't select our field. All right, so like I said from the beginning, it's basically going to confuse a lot of people. So make sure it's the area we want to work with. So make sure you select area and then we change this to horizontal and then we click on OK and click on OK and then this changes back to our area, which is in the horizontal form. All right, so this is perfect. We are going to get back into our schedule and we are going to talk about the formatting again. We are going to talk more about the formatting. So that is what the heading orientation stands for, right? It's just to change the orientation of your headings, all right, which is the level, number, area. So I'm going to work with the area now, and with the alignment, that is if you want to align all of these values I have in here. All right, so let's say if I want to change the values of all of these spaces or all of these rooms, all right, so if I want them to be centered, all right, so I can just click on center and then I can click on OK and then you notice it changes that in there. All right, it changes that in there where we have all of these totals in there. So it changes also here and also changes here as well. So those are some of the things you should have at the back of your head. All right, so there are some of the things you should have at the back of your head that when you change with this, when you change anything in here, it's also going to affect all of this in here. All right, so you are working with that. So we want to create a much more better format, a much more presentable schedule where it's going to be very neat. So when I move the mouse pointer away from this panel, you can see it doesn't even have an outline. It doesn't close all of that. It just creates this like some box in there, all right, with some spaces in there. So this is where we are going to work all of that in there, all right, with the formatting. We are basically just going to work on all of that in there. So now I'm going to click back on my schedule in there, and I'm going to get back into formatting. And we have the alignment. I've just spoken about that, which is the area we centered all of that. And with the field format, all right, with the field format is where if any of you guys do not have your units, all right, so let's say with the area in there, you've selected area, and with the area you are going to notice you have just maybe 43. You don't have the 43 meter square in there, all right, you just have 43 in there. So this is where the field formats is actually going to help you. So with my project settings, I've actually set my area up to have my units, which is the meter square I have in there. So what you can do is, if you do not have your units right beside your figures inside of your areas, your area field, all right, so what you can do is you just make sure you uncheck your use project settings, and then you can click in here, and then make sure you find your square meters, all right. If it's inches, you make sure you find your square inches. If it's feet, you can find square millimeters, you can find that. So we are going to work with the square meters, and we are going to add, let's say if I want to add much more precise, I want to make it much more precise in there, you can add some decimal places. So I can put that to 2 decimal places in there, and definitely I want it to be a meter square. That is because we've chosen the square meters in there. And you can suppress trailings to 0. I'm not going to use that in here. I'm going to use explain that in the course of this series. So you can use digit grouping as well. So I'm going to explain that in the course of this series. So you can click on OK in there, and click on OK also in here as well, and then you're going to notice we have that in there. So we've made it more precise, all right. We didn't round all of those figures up to a whole number, all right. So we have 42.79 meters square in there, which is for these spaces I have in all of these spaces. So I'm making it much more precise, all right. So this is where you do all of those formatting, all right. So I'm going to get back into my schedule, and I'm going to go back into formatting, edit type, and we are going to get back into our area. And also with the conditional formatting, when you click on the conditional formatting, is where you have where you can actually like I said from the beginning, where you can add that color in there, all right. So if you want to add colors in there to be able to highlight everything on your area tab, so that is where you can do that in this, in the conditional formatting. So when you click on the conditional formatting, you are going to have this pop-up menu where you can select from the various fields. So definitely I want to highlight the area, and we have this also in here. So let me explain this in there. So let's say I want to highlight rooms. I want to highlight, let's say, rooms that have areas more than 100 meters square, all right. So if I want to highlight rooms that have areas more than 100 meters square, or if I want to highlight, let's say, rooms that are below 9 meters square, or rooms that are above 5 meters square, so this is where the conditional formatting works, all right. So if I want to highlight everything in the area, highlight everything, I can just go in here, and then I can check all of this in there equal to, and then I can highlight everything in there, all right. So now I want to highlight rooms that are, let's say, they are greater than so I've chosen a greater than in there, and then you can change that value to, let's say I want rooms that are greater than 100 meters square. I want to highlight those various rooms in there, all right. So if, let's say, I want rooms that are between 100 meters square and 150 meters square, all right. So if I come in here and I choose I'm going to choose less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to in there, or maybe you can choose between, all right. So if I want rooms that are between, let's say, 100 meters square, I want to highlight rooms that are between 100 meters square to 150 meters square. I can come in here, then I choose my between, so 100 meters square, and then I can put in the other option in here. So let's say 150 meters square, all right. So it's going to highlight rooms just in between this meter square area I have in there, and then I can add a color to that in there, all right. So let's say I'm going to keep that, all of those items, gray in there, all right. So this is just English language. I don't need to explain or make an examples of all of this. This is just English language, all right? All of us have been to school, so we can read. So you have between and you have not between. So I can choose not between and then put in that figure in there, or I can choose greater than 15 meters square and then I can put that in there. So I'm going to leave this at between, and then I chose a color to highlight all of those in there. I can click on OK and then click on OK in here, and then you're going to notice in here Revit is automatically going to highlight that room with a specific color I gave it. All right, so let's say if I want to highlight rooms for maybe an interior designer, and I want to show her the rooms that are in between, maybe she says she wants rooms that are in between 5 meters square, I can just come in here, highlight that, and then give it to the interior designers. All right, so this is how you can do that in there. All right, so that's basically what the conditional formatting does. All right, so I'm going to get back into the formatting field and click on my area. Make sure you have this always in mind. All right, so I'm going to click on my area in there, and we've spoken about our conditional formatting, and we have that in the show conditional format on sheet. Definitely we are going to show that on sheet. All right, so now let's say if I want to hide that field, I can come in here and hide that, but I'm going to talk more about this during the course of this series. I'm going to talk more about this in the course of this series. And then we have the calculation in there, or I definitely I do not want any calculation, so I'm going to leave that at no calculation. But I'm going to talk more, we're going to do schedules that we are going to have the calculation, where I'm going to talk about that. All right, so now we have the multiple values indication. All right, we have the display at varies, and then we have the display custom text. All right, so we have the use project settings in there. You can choose any of them in there, and then you can click on OK in here, and then we have all of these in here. So I'm going to talk more about that during the course of this series, so you can understand basically everything that is happening in here. All right, so now I'm going to move next to the appearance aspect. All right, so I can get into the appearance aspect by getting into the properties panel and then click on the appearance asset. All right, so I have this appearance aspect in here. So with the appearance aspect is where we can actually work by cleaning out all of these lines and also creating a much more presentable schedule in there. All right, so with the appearance asset, we have the grid lines in there, which is all of these grid lines you see in there, which is set to thin lines. All right, so you can actually change those lines in there, and I can use this line, which is the wide lines. All right, I can use this wide lines, and you can check this to grid in headers and footers spaces. All right, you can check that. So I'm going to first of all uncheck that, so we see what happens. So you're going to click on OK, and you're going to notice the wide lines is going to be used for every single thing in there. All right, so now let me just get back into the schedule in there, get into appearance, and I'm going to check the grids in headers and footers only, and you're going to notice it's going to also create all of these columns for everything in there. All right, for our grades, the headers and the footers, is going to create it to actually look like a box, which is this is quite I think this is quite refined. This is quite perfect. So I'm going to leave this as it is. I'm going to get back into my room schedule, get into appearance tab, and we have that in there checked, and with the outline. All right, so if let's say with this outline you see in here, if you want to use a different line for that, you can actually use that different line. So you can come in here, select that different line, and then you can use that. So you notice I used a hidden line for this lines in there. That is if you have maybe a line you have created inside of Revit. All right, so you can go in there and then you use those lines for that. So I'm going to change this back to, let me use this concrete line and see what I have in there. So this is far from refined. All right, so get back into edit, and I'm going to change this. I'm going to use the medium lines, and then with this I'm going to use the wide lines in there. All right, so with the height blank row data, you can uncheck that and check that as well. So I can keep this in here, and you notice we have this wide lines for the outline, and then we have the medium line type for the eternal stuff that we have happening in here. All right, so this is perfect. We have this in there. I'm going to get back into my schedule, get back into the edit type, and we have this in here, and we have the strip rows, we can check this. So I'm going to check this so you guys can see what we have in here. All right, so we have the first row strip color and then the second row strip color. So we are going to start with the first row strip color, and then we click that, and then you're going to notice it's always going to give us a strip color for all of these rows. So it has some color in there. All right, we can actually change the color for that by clicking in here, and then we can get a much more color, deeper color for that, so it doesn't conflict with our area sorting out and grouping color formatting color that we did in there. So you can select the second row and then click on OK, and then it's going to do that also in there for you, which is perfect. Now it's going to do that for the level. I actually didn't do that, so let me get back in here, get into appearance, and we have that in there. Okay, so this is the second row strip color. So this is how you can use that also in there. It's just basically going to give you some strip colors on basically every single row you have in there, which is going to make it much more make your schedules come out much more alive. All right, so that's what I call it, makes it come out much more alive. All right, so now we have the option where we can show the title, which is the room schedule. So definitely we do want to show the title. So if you do not want to show the title, you can uncheck that. So you can uncheck that. Let me uncheck that so you see. So we do not have the title in there. Right, it's also vanished out of there. It's now invincible. So we are going to get back in here, get into appearance, and definitely we want our title, and definitely we want to show the headers as well. And then we have this in here, which is the title text, the header text, the body text. All right, so you can decide to create specific text for your various fields. All right, so we have this title text, so I can decide for the title text. Let me just click on OK and then bring that in there. So I can bring this, let me just bring this to the center in here, get back in here and get back into the appearance. All right, so let's say so we have the option to use a different kind of text for the title text, which is the room schedule, which is this you see right here. And then with the header text you see in here, we have that in there where we can use a different text for that. And with the body text, which is everything you see in here, we can use different text for that. So if you want to create mostly different text, and maybe the text should have different colors for that, you can actually do that. You can get into the annotate tab and you have this text in here, and then you can click on this drop down menu you see in here. All right, so when you click on that arrow right beneath that icon in there, and you have the all of those texts you see in here, which is all of those texts we had in there. So this is our schedule default Revit text. So now I'm first of all going to create a schedule text for the header. All right, so I'm going to start off with the title. So I'm going to start with the title in here, and then I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to call this title. All right, so this text is going to be for the title. So with the title text, I want the font to be a Roman. Let me just use a Times Roman, and I want it to be big enough. I want it to be big, and I want to change the color. Let me make it red in there, and I want it to be also bold in there, and I want it to be also underlined in there. Right, so you can use this in there, and we can click on apply, click on OK in there, and let's just get back in there and we can create more duplicates. All right, so we have this schedule for title, and let's just duplicate our title, and with this let's rename this. All right, so let's rename this. So we are not going to call this title 2, we are going to call this the header text. All right, so let's just call this our header text and click on OK. And with the header text, I want to reduce that a little bit. Let me keep this at 3, and with that I'm also going to change the color for that, and I do not want that underlined, but I don't want them to be bold, and click on OK. And with the schedule text, I'm going to leave it with this basic schedule text that it has in there. So let's get back into our appearance and let's start off. So we are going to change this. We are going to start with the title text, and we are going to change this also to the header text, and I'm going to leave the body text with the default schedule text. All right, so this is perfect. I can click on OK, and then you can see we have this in there. Right, so we have our room schedule, and then we have the header text, all of this in there, which is far from perfect. So you can decide to give it a color, or you can decide to keep all of this black if you want, and if you want to underline them, you can also check that to underline that also in there, and you can basically just do every single thing you want in there. All right, so I'm going to end in this section, and we're going to continue in our next section, where we are going to talk more about scheduling in Revit, where we're going to head into key schedules, the calculating fields, also get into the view notes schedules and all of that. So I'm going to end here. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to my channel, make sure you like this video, and if you have anything you want to add to this particular part, you can actually drop that in the comment sections. But if you have any questions, I do want you to hold on. Maybe at the end of this series your questions will be answered. All right, so don't be quick to ask questions quickly. All right, so maybe at the course or at the end of the series your questions will be answered. So just write down your questions, and maybe during the course of this series I might answer your question unknowingly. So basically this is it for this part. I'm going to end here. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I'll catch you guys in the next part. Peace out. I'm still working real hard on a Saturday. My future I don't see from a mile away.